using your social capital for a man who had his court date pushed back so he
Offset, one of the three pillars that once built Migos into a global hip-hop empire, is now at the center of a nightmare no one saw coming. A man who once commanded stadiums and shaped an entire era of rap is now reportedly fighting for stability from a hospital bed after a violent shooting at a Florida casino. But the physical injury may not be the only battle he's facing. Behind closed doors, whispers suggest something far more disturbing, a financial collapse so deep that he allegedly reached out to his estranged wife, Cardi B, in a desperate attempt to stay above water. How does a life built at the very top start slipping this fast into chaos? And according to emerging accounts, this wasn't a slow downfall, it was a single night that detonated everything. The turning point allegedly began on the night of April 6, 2026, inside the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida, where Offset's evening reportedly unraveled in real time. What started as a normal night inside a place built for luck and risk quickly transformed into something far more dangerous. Tension in the air, rising pressure, and then suddenly, everything snapped. Gunfire erupted inside the venue, throwing the entire scene into panic. Within minutes, security rushed in, crowds scattered, and Offset was taken out of the chaos and transported to Memorial Regional Hospital. His team later confirmed he had been shot but stable, under strict medical supervision. Even so, the image of a global superstar lying injured in a hospital bed sent shockwaves across the internet, freezing fans in disbelief. And as always, the digital world didn't wait for answers. It started digging for them. Clips began circulating online, allegedly showing Lil J confronting Offset inside the casino before the situation escalated. Early reports linked the confrontation to a $10,000 gambling debt, with claims that Offset had refused to settle it. But those close to the rumor mill insisted that number was only the surface, a small piece of something much larger and far more dangerous beneath it. Some claims even pushed the alleged debt close to $900,000, suggesting this wasn't a single loss or a bad night at all, but a long, grinding pattern of gambling pressure finally reaching its breaking point. And what made it even more explosive was the suggestion that this tension had been building for months before the casino incident ever happened. As far back as January 2025, during a Twitch livestream, Lil J had already begun publicly calling Offset out. He accused him of struggling financially, leaning on Cardi B, and battling a serious gambling habit behind the scenes. He even claimed he had personally witnessed Offset asking people for money inside casinos, allegations he didn't keep confined to private conversations, but broadcast repeatedly across social media and streams, fueling a growing storm around his name. He didn't stop there. The message followed him everywhere, on Instagram, on Twitch streams, in interviews, across every platform where attention could be grabbed. Lil J kept pushing the same narrative again and again, painting Offset as broke, accusing him of owing money, and repeatedly dragging that alleged $10,000 debt into the spotlight until it became impossible to ignore. By the time both men crossed paths at the Seminole Hard Rock that Monday night, it was clear this was never going to be a normal encounter. The tension wasn't new, it had been building in public for months. And when they finally ended up in the same place, everything snapped almost instantly. What began as heated words quickly spiraled into physical confrontation, and then, according to reports, escalated into gunfire. In the aftermath, Lil J was taken into custody outside the casino. Authorities later booked him on disorderly conduct charges, a first-degree misdemeanor under Florida law. But what raised even more questions was what wasn't filed. No weapons-related charges were added. That silence only deepened the confusion. His legal team moved fast to control the narrative. Attorney Don Florio pushed back strongly, insisting that Lil J was not shot and was not facing any firearm-related accusations, dismissing circulating claims as completely false. But instead of clearing things up, the statement only added another layer of contradiction to an already chaotic situation. Then the internet made things even worse. A TMZ clip surfaced showing Offset in a hospital gown, casually smoking, as if the world outside didn't exist. The footage spread instantly, triggering shock and disbelief across social media. people struggling to process how someone reportedly shot moments earlier could appear so calm, almost detached, inside a hospital room. And once Lil J was released, the situation escalated again. On camera, he didn't hold back. He publicly called Offset a rat, accusing him of cooperating with authorities and allegedly pointing him out after the incident. He even mocked Offset's reaction during the chaos, turning a violent situation into a public humiliation war. At that point, the story stopped being just about a shooting. It became something bigger, a collision of reputation, loyalty, ego, and credibility. Offset wasn't just a victim in a hospital bed anymore. He was now trending for all the wrong reasons, tied to accusations, debt rumors, and street credibility attacks all at once. And while the world debated who did what, one question started cutting through the noise. How did Offset end up in a situation where money, pressure, and conflict were all closing in on him at the same time? To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning, to when Offset, born Kiari Kendrell Cephas, first rose to fame as part of Migos, alongside Quavo and Takeoff. They weren't just successful, they were everywhere. Albums like Culture and Culture 2 dominated charts, and their influence spread far beyond music into fashion, language, and pop culture itself. At their peak, the numbers were staggering. Between 2017 and 2018, Migos reportedly earned around $25 million, fueled by nearly 100 shows in a single year. The following year pushed even higher, around $36 million. They weren't just a rap group, they were a cultural engine. The jewelry, the cars. I filed for divorce in 2020, reconcile, but beneath the surface of all that success, the cracks were already spreading. By 2022, whispers of tension inside Migos began turning into louder rumors of a possible split. Reports suggested Offset had crossed a serious personal line involving Quavo's ex, Saweetie, a betrayal that went far beyond music or business. This wasn't just a group disagreement anymore, it was family conflict. These weren't just collaborators, they were blood-connected, and that made everything more explosive. Then came the moment that changed the entire trajectory of their story. On November 1st, 2022, Takeoff was fatally shot outside a bowling alley in Houston during what started as a dice game dispute he wasn't even directly part of. He was just 28 years old, described by many as calm, distant from conflict, and ultimately an innocent bystander caught in the wrong place at the worst possible time. The loss shattered the foundation of Migos, and in many ways, nothing was ever the same again. And now, years later, another alleged gambling-related incident placing Offset in a hospital has brought back uncomfortable parallels that fans can't ignore. The timing, the circumstances, the recurring theme of money and risk, it all feels like history echoing in a darker form. Even before the latest chaos, Offset was already battling problems behind the scenes. He found himself locked in a legal war with his label, Quality Control Music, over ownership of his solo catalog. He claimed he had paid millions to gain control of his work, only to end up in a drawn-out fight that drained time, focus, and money. Eventually, the case was dropped, but not before leaving behind heavy financial and emotional strain. At the same time, his solo career began losing momentum. Projects that once would have dominated charts started underperforming, and the solo spotlight never quite matched the energy he had inside Migos. With the group no longer active, the financial engine that once powered everything began to slow down, but the lifestyle didn't adjust with it. The mansions, luxury cars, jewelry, security, and entourage all kept running at full speed. Meanwhile, Cardi B was continuing to rise even higher, breaking records, expanding her brand, and stacking new achievements that only widened the gap between them publicly. On paper, Offset's net worth was still estimated around $40 million, while Cardi B's was closer to $100 million. But as more details surfaced, people began questioning how stable those numbers really were. Then came the tax issues, and they were far from minor. The IRS reportedly issued Offset a bill of around $1.5 million for the 2022 tax year. Documents suggested he owed over $1.57 million, with the debt lingering unresolved since 2024. And that wasn't the only one. Another lien added nearly $500,000 tied to 2023 taxes. On top of that, the Georgia Department of Revenue reportedly pursued over $292,000 from 2021. When everything is added together, the total edges close to $800,000 in known public tax debt alone. And because tax liens are public record, the financial pressure wasn't hidden. It was visible, documented, and unfolding in real time for the entire world to see. The pressure wasn't something hidden behind closed doors anymore. It was out in the open, stacking up in real time for everyone to see. And then came another blow. Legal trouble added fuel to an already burning situation. A Miami judge reportedly ordered Offset to pay $232,000 to two individuals who claimed he had assaulted them. Another financial hit. Another layer of strain. Another drain on a system already under pressure. So now the picture starts to look heavier. Taxes piling up, lawsuits stacking in the background, music income slowing down, and a lifestyle that still demands millions to maintain. It creates a kind of pressure that doesn't just sit quietly, it pushes. It distorts decisions. It changes how people react. And in Offset's case, that pressure allegedly started showing up in a very specific way: gambling. Studies have long shown how gambling can spiral into financial destruction, linking it to rising debt, damaged credit, and even bankruptcy in severe cases. And if the rumors about nearly seven-figure losses are even partly true, then this pattern becomes hard to ignore. According to Lil J, he even witnessed moments where Offset appeared visibly shaken inside casinos, panicking, as he described it. One word, but a revealing one, because panic is what happens when control starts slipping. And then there's Cardi B, arguably the most complicated piece of this entire story. Their relationship has never been stable. Married in 2017, separated more than once, pulled back together, then torn apart again in public view. Carded later, then split again in 2023. By 2024, she filed once more, and this time it felt different. More final. More serious. But Offset didn't step away quietly. In 2025, he reportedly filed for joint custody and even requested spousal support, a move that immediately raised eyebrows and shifted public perception of the situation. Then Cardi went public, and she didn't soften her words. She accused Offset of failing to support their children financially, claiming she had been carrying the majority of the expenses alone. According to her, she was paying around $10,000 a month just for a driver, while their daughter's schooling reportedly cost $45,000 a year. She also alleged that Offset hadn't contributed meaningfully to those expenses for over a year and said he had barely been present in their youngest child's life. Then came the moment that sent everything viral. During a live stream, Cardi said, "The only reason why I'm still married is because somebody wants me to pay for their taxes." She added that she felt trapped, claiming it would take millions of dollars and even property transfers just to finalize the separation. And according to her, that somebody was Offset. At that point, the situation stopped looking like a typical celebrity breakup. It started sounding like a financial standoff, a negotiation where emotions, money, and legal pressure were all colliding at once. Reports also suggested Offset pushed for spousal support while arguing that Cardi had left him responsible for their children during her pregnancy with her fourth child, her first with NFL star Stefon Diggs. And then came the biggest shock of all. He allegedly demanded a 70/30 split of their assets in his favor. Given that Cardi B's net worth is significantly higher, that kind of demand immediately sparked controversy. If anything close to that deal had gone through, it could have meant tens of millions shifting hands. Offset, according to reports, stood firm, insisting, "I built her brand. I deserve half." And just like that, what started as a personal breakup began to look like a full-scale battle over money, legacy, and control. He pushed back on that narrative entirely. According to him, his role in her early rise wasn't just emotional support, it was foundational. He claimed he helped guide her at the beginning of her career, introduced her to key industry circles, and played a part in increasing her visibility long before she became a global force. In his view, Cardi B's success wasn't just organic, it was something he helped shape from the ground up. At the heart of the dispute is a single belief he keeps repeating, that without his influence and early backing, Cardi B might never have reached the level she's at today. That he helped open doors, amplified her presence, and contributed to building the momentum that eventually turned her into a superstar. Whether that argument actually holds weight is still debated, but what's undeniable is how far apart both sides have become. By November 2025, the situation reportedly reached a breaking point. Cardi is said to have offered a $10 million settlement to bring everything to an end, a clean exit, a final close to years of legal and personal conflict. But Offset allegedly refused. He rejected it outright. And that decision changed the tone of everything. Because in the public's eyes, $10 million wasn't a small offer, it was a massive exit package. Turning it down only intensified questions about what was really driving the dispute. Money, principle, or something deeper. Meanwhile, Cardi B continued to move forward. By 2026, her estimated net worth had climbed to around $100 million. Her new album, Am I the Drama?, was gaining attention, her career momentum remained strong, and her public image looked more stable than ever. Life, at least on the surface, was progressing upward for her. But for Offset, the picture looked very different. He was facing mounting tax issues, ongoing legal battles, alleged gambling losses, and a music career that no longer generated the same consistent power it once did. The contrast between them became impossible to ignore. This was the same man who once showed up at Cardi B's concert with $15,000 worth of roses, publicly trying to win her back in a grand, emotional gesture. Now, the story had completely shifted, from romance and spectacle to court filings, financial tension, and survival pressure. And that brings the question back into focus. After everything, the alleged casino shooting, the viral hospital footage, the public accusations, and the ongoing divorce battle, what does Offset's reality actually look like now? It paints the image of someone trapped in a cycle that keeps tightening. Gambling addiction, in clinical terms, is recognized as a serious behavioral disorder affecting a small portion of people, but for those impacted, the consequences can be devastating. Studies show that a significant percentage of compulsive gamblers eventually face bankruptcy, and relationship breakdown rates are notably higher than average. The pattern is often similar: borrowing money from friends or associates, hiding losses, and then chasing bigger wins in an attempt to recover everything that's already gone. When access to money runs out, desperation usually replaces control. That's why Lil J's claims added another layer to the story. He alleged he personally saw Offset in a casino in a distressed state, trying to borrow money, and even said he had lent him $5,000 at one point, with over $10,000 allegedly still owed. And according to multiple circulating reports, that situation might only represent a fraction of a much larger problem, potentially approaching close to $900,000 in gambling-related debt. At the same time, the divorce proceedings with Cardi B remain unresolved. Filed in mid-2024 and still dragging on, the case continues to revolve around financial disagreements, asset division, and long-standing disputes that neither side seems willing to fully settle. Offset is still reportedly pushing for a larger share, while rejecting earlier settlement offers. Meanwhile, the financial pressure doesn't slow down. The debts don't pause. And the tension only continues to build, with no clear end in sight. Lil J isn't new to violence either. He reportedly survived being shot multiple times back in 2022 during a robbery attempt, a situation that gave him first-hand experience of how quickly things can turn life-threatening. That's what makes this confrontation even more shocking. Even with that kind of past, the situation still escalated to gunfire, showing just how far things can spiral when money, pride, and unresolved tension collide. What might look like a simple $10,000 dispute on the surface can quickly evolve into something far more dangerous when ego and pressure take over. At its core, the Offset situation is built on contrast. On one side, you have a man who helped shape one of the most influential rap groups of a generation, Migos, a group that at its peak reportedly generated around $36 million in a single year. He wasn't just part of the movement. He helped define the sound, the style, and the cultural wave that followed. A life at the very top of hip-hop, surrounded by success, influence, and constant demand. But on the other side of that same story is a very different reality. Lawsuits, financial pressure, public controversies, and a personal life that appears to be unraveling in real time. And the deeper you go, the sharper that contrast becomes. This isn't just about money being lost. It's about what happens when the structure holding everything together starts to weaken. At one point, Offset was part of a system that felt unstoppable. Non-stop tours, brand deals, streaming revenue, features, and global attention all working at once. In that environment, it's easy to believe the momentum will never stop. But when that system breaks down, reality hits differently. The breakup of Migos wasn't just an artistic shift, it was a financial earthquake. The chemistry, the shared spotlight, the constant demand, all of it disappeared. And replacing that level of income as a solo artist is far more difficult than it looks from the outside. Not every release connects. Not every project performs. And suddenly the safety net is gone. But the lifestyle doesn't disappear with it. The expenses remain, and in many cases, they grow. Bigger homes, more responsibilities, entourages, expectations, and an image that still has to be maintained no matter what's happening behind the scenes. That imbalance creates pressure fast. When income slows but spending doesn't, the gap becomes unavoidable. That's where risky thinking often starts to creep in. Because when someone is used to making millions, slowing down doesn't feel like an option, it feels like failure. And in that mindset, gambling can start to look like an escape route. A fast solution. A way to recover without waiting for time to do its work. But that's where the illusion takes over. Because gambling isn't designed for long-term recovery, it's designed in the opposite direction. And once losses start stacking, the pattern changes. One loss becomes 2, then 10, and suddenly the focus is no longer about winning. It's about trying to recover what's already gone. That's why the reports of nearly $900,000 in alleged gambling-related debt hit so hard. Numbers like that don't come from a single mistake. They come from repeated risks, escalating pressure, and decisions building on top of each other over time. And when you add public attention into the mix, everything intensifies. Every move is watched. Every rumor spreads instantly. Every mistake is amplified. Instead of private struggle, it becomes public spectacle, played out in front of millions. That's exactly the environment this situation exists in. Violence allegations, debt rumors, relationship breakdowns, and career uncertainty, all unfolding at once, under constant public scrutiny. And at that point, the pressure isn't just financial anymore. It becomes reputational, emotional, and personal all at the same time. Being labeled a rat on camera is more than just an insult. It's a direct hit to identity, reputation, and how someone is perceived in the world they come from. True or not, once that kind of label spreads, it doesn't fade easily. It follows a person, reshapes narratives around them, and in certain environments, it can carry serious real-world consequences. So at this point, Offset isn't only battling financial pressure, he's also fighting an image war. And when reputation pressure and money pressure collide, it becomes a weight that's difficult for anyone to carry. At the same time, Cardi B's continued success only widens the contrast. She's still dominating, still expanding her brand, still adding wins to her career. And every new milestone on her side makes Offset's struggles look even more visible by comparison. Not because she's doing anything wrong, but because the gap between their trajectories is now impossible to ignore. That contrast adds another emotional layer to the situation. It's not just about separation anymore. It's about watching someone you were once aligned with continue rising while everything around you feels unstable. And moments like that can push people in two very different directions, either toward rebuilding and stability, or deeper into destructive patterns. And based on everything being reported, it seems like Offset is still standing right in the middle of that crossroads, with no clear direction yet. The truth is, stories like this aren't rare. They just aren't usually seen in real time like this. The mix of fast money, high pressure, fame expectations, and risky behavior has disrupted many careers before. The difference here is visibility. Every development is instantly public, instantly dissected, instantly turned into content. That creates a feeling of unpredictability, like the story is constantly shifting. One moment he's recovering in a hospital, the next he's trending online, and the next wave of claims is surfacing about money, lawsuits, or personal conflict. It builds a sense that the situation could change direction at any second. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps people watching. Because at this point, the story isn't just about what went wrong, it's about what happens next. Does he stabilize and rebuild, or does the cycle pull him deeper? Right now, there's no clear answer. And that uncertainty is what makes the situation feel bigger than just celebrity headlines. On one side, you've got a man recovering from a gunshot wound while simultaneously dealing with mounting financial pressure, alleged tax debts, state claims, casino-related obligations, and ongoing legal battles, all while navigating a highly public divorce, where money is still at the center of negotiations. And what makes it even heavier is the fact that family is directly in the middle of it all. Offset and Cardi B share children, Culture, Wave, and Blossom, and they're growing up while this entire situation plays out in public view. The headlines, the court battles, the accusations, it's not abstract for them. It's their reality. That's why the contrast hits harder than anything else. The same man being linked to massive financial pressure and legal issues is also the father in this very public, very emotional story. And every new development adds another layer to an already complicated picture. Then comes the final question hanging over everything. If a large settlement eventually happens in the divorce, does it actually resolve anything? Or does it simply delay a deeper cycle? Because history shows that when underlying patterns don't change, financial resets don't always lead to stability, especially when behavior and pressure points remain the same. In situations tied to gambling allegations and financial strain, money can sometimes act more like temporary relief than a real solution. And that's why even the idea of a multi-million-dollar settlement doesn't come with certainty. It could resolve conflict, or it could just reset the clock on the same cycle. At its core, this isn't just a relationship story anymore. It's a high-stakes financial and emotional standoff, with both sides standing firm and the outcomes still undecided. And that's where everything currently stands, not with closure, but with tension.